Okie dokie, I believe we are all the way being recorded. Hello and welcome to my graveyard. I am your host of the evening, the Cemetery Man from Salem, Mass. Always taking names and kicking candy ass. Live in Little Color here with you on Grande's Graveyard. And I know it's pretty crazy to see me 2 days in a row, but I guess the circumstance sort of called for it. If you didn't watch the show live last night, unfortunately, about a half hour in, maybe even less than that, maybe about 20, 25 minutes in, my Wi-Fi just started bugging out. And unfortunately, the show past that was pretty next to unwatchable. This morning when it finally uploaded, I decided to just, click through it and see, if the problems were, undoable, and unfortunately they were pretty much undoable, and the show was unwatchable, and I felt terrible about that. Last night there were people telling me that there were buffering problems, but man, I didn't know to the how bad of an extent. Like, it was a pretty unwatchable show from there on out. But I gotta say a couple of things. Number one, I'd like to issue an apology. I'm really sorry for that. I've had a couple of, the underwater stream back when I was at Ram Nation. We'd have problems, technical difficulties from time to time, but never any to this point where I had to go ahead and delete the episode. So I want to say I apologize for that, and I'll try for the future to prevent that as best I can. But I'd also like to issue a thank you statement for everybody that watched and stayed. The amount of people that stayed and watched last night, even though literally you could barely make out what I was saying, is like the ultimate honor, man. It means a lot to me. I know that it could not have been an easy listen, but people kept listening and commenting and having a good time in the graveyard. And at the end of the day, that's just, warms my heart to see. So I wanted to say thank you so much to all my friends, family, followers, subscribers, all that jazz for watching last night and hanging tough with me, even though, it was a sort of a rough episode around the edges. But I figure I make all that up to you because I did promise a Cloverfield graveyard. And instead of doing another live stream, I figured I'd just go ahead and pre-record reviews for all of these because we had fun on the live stream. It's just, it sort of got, jumbled, if you will. So I figured I'd go ahead and I'd re-review and re-record reviews for Cloverfield, 10 Cloverfield Lane, and of course the Cloverfield Paradox. I don't know. I guess I could do them all in one video. I have like a certain time limit on this particular format that I'm shooting this on. So it's a pretty decent long, time length I have here, so I can get right into things. I probably can cover all three in this one video. It would just for time's sake be easier. So I guess we will go ahead and do that. Again, I apologize, and I want to thank the fans. So thank you guys so much. But without further ado, we will dive right into the original film. I will say, of the three that I reviewed, this one on the episode you could make out the best. After this, the 10 Cloverfield Lane and Cloverfield Paradox, you could not even understand what I was saying. So I was just like so upset when I saw after I wrapped the show. I was like, oh my gosh, like I really let people down. So I really wanted to make it up to y'all. But first and foremost, from the year 2008, this is Cloverfield. Yes, I got the 4K Ultra HD edition of this movie. A lot of fun to watch it on this. Everything's a little bit brighter, easier to see. And this is a shaky cam film, so the better you can see stuff, obviously the better the experience is going to be. But I always harken back to a screening of the first Michael Bay Transformers film that me and my father went to the theater and see. And I remember not thinking much of that movie then, still don't think much of any of those movies now. And the one takeaway I did have, though, when we left the theater was a little teaser trailer for this movie right here, Cloverfield. And I remember it was a 30-second teaser of these kids at a party, and all of a sudden, the heart of New York City, just this crazy explosion happened, and all these kids ran down the steps outside into the middle of the street. You heard people shrieking, "It's huge! It's alive!" And all of a sudden, you saw the head of the Statue of Liberty just being tossed like a football in the middle of the street of New York City. And then just this man shrieking in terror, "Oh my God! Oh my God!" And the teaser trailer ended. No title. No inkling of what the film was going to be. Just a date, 1/18/08. And I remember saying to my dad as on the ride home from Transformers that night, I said, 1/18/08, bro, we got to go see Cloverfield. And I remember we were getting super excited about it. And going to see this in the theater was very fun for me personally. For my father, on the other hand, he had an interesting experience because a lot of people, there were warnings of motion sickness at the door for this movie, that you would get motion sickness from watching this thing. I was perfectly okay. Him, on the other hand, he turned like bright green and he looked like he was going to be deathly ill. And I remember leaving the theater. We actually had to walk a few blocks up and down the streets by the cinema, and he really just needed to collect himself because he got really dizzy and kind of sickened by the film, which is, I think, crazy. But I know quite a few people that suffered that through watching this movie, and I just thought that was absolutely wild. But I don't know. I mean, it is what it is. The thing you remember about going to see movies in the cinema, sometimes, you remember the good things like that. But this movie, I think, is fantastic as a whole. It's basically J.J. Abrams' attempt to recreate Godzilla and make a new monster for American-going audiences alike. You see, he and his son were in Japan promoting one of J.J. Abrams' movies. I believe it was Mission Impossible 3. And they were at a toy store. And the son was playing with these Godzilla figures. And he said, "Hey, Dad, why don't we have Godzilla in the United States? Obviously, we have the Matthew Broderick movie, but why do we not have a classic American monster like this?" And JJ responded, "Well, there is King Kong, and there is the ants movies, them, and the giant bug movies, Tarantula." He said, "But you're right, son. There haven't been a old school classic monster movie that is primarily known for being American." And that's where the whole idea for this movie kind of came to be. And JJ went back to his production studio, A Bad Robot, and he pitched the idea. And you got Drew Goddard to pen the script, who went on to do, of course, Cabin in the Woods and fantastic films like Bad Times at the El Royale. You got a young up and coming director in Matt Reeves to direct this thing, who I really like. Matt Reeves, he went on to do some cool movies like Let Me In, the remake, of course, of Let the Right One In the United States in 2010. And you kind of had just all of the pieces fall into place. But the most interesting thing about Cloverfield is the entire film is shot on video or found footage or lost footage, whatever you want to call it, perspective. And I think that's the thing that gives this movie its identity. It's the found footage perspective of things. And we watch through the camera of Hud, is the character's name, played by TJ Miller, who, of course, went on to do the Deadpool movies. People know him from that. And they're kind of doing this going away party for their friend Rob, and he's filming everything. And then basically once shit hits the fan, which doesn't take very long in this film, once shit hits the fan, the entire movie is from this cameraman's perspective of this monster movie. And I just thought that was a great idea, because so many monster movies before this, they are shot like Hollywood epics, right? We're going to have, if it's Godzilla in the, the 50s, we're going to have a man in a rubber suit. If it's King Kong, we're going to do all of these things with animatronics and what we can do to be creative and make Kong look as real as Kong can be. This movie, on the other hand, decides, let's change the perspective. Let's put the viewer in the perspective of the people on the ground. So thus, everything just seems bigger, because we're on the ground viewing this almost from a first-person perspective. And to me, that was the smartest thing this movie did. And I think it's a thing that's, makes it stand out, not just between other monster movies, but other found footage movies as a whole as well. There are not that many found footage monster movies, but this is a damn good one. And I think this is a movie that sort of was the pioneer of the second wave of Blair Witch type films being popular, right? Everything after Blair Witch in like the year 2000, 2001, oh, that's a Blair Witch knock. A couple of friends grabbed a camera, went into the woods and filmed their horror movie. This sort of had the same ramblings at the time. Films that came after this were shot on video. Oh, that's a Cloverfield knock. Oh, this is trying to be Cloverfield. Pretty funny, but yeah, no, this was sort of the kick off of the second wave of found footage horror films. And I think it's a damn good one in my humble opinion. I like the cast primarily. At the time, there were mostly no-name actors. Of course, you have Lizzie Kaplan in there, who I always thought looked like a younger Asia Argento. Jessica Lucas, who I think is one of the most beautiful women on the face of the earth. Mike Vogel is in this in a small role. Of course, Odette Annabelle, who went on to be in shows like House and in films like The Unborn, more horror films. I like the cast in this. I think they do a serviceable enough job. And it's basically just an hour and like 13 minutes. This thing runs about 73 minutes without credits. So if you're not I don't want to sit through a long movie, 73 minutes without credits, man. This is a quick watch. It's enjoyable. It's fast paced. It's entertaining. And I think it's one of those few movies that does everything right. And I do think it's one of those few movies that used the era that it was made in to its utmost advantage. That teaser trailer, I will never forget seeing that in the theater. And that was my main takeaway from that night at the cinema, was a 30-second trailer of something that I didn't even know. Wow. Well, how can that be your biggest takeaway? Because it's marketing done right. That's the answer. And I think that, this movie also, when it comes to conspiracy theories, it just absolutely hit a home run. Of course, people remember the ending of this with the couple underneath the bridge. And my name is Robert Hawkins, and 11 hours ago, something attacked the city. And it's still out there, and he's sort of almost giving his own eulogy. And I thought it was kind of crazy how at the beginning they're saying goodbye to him at this party, and the film sort of wraps up with him recording his own goodbye, saying, I'm not coming back. We're not going to make it. Very interesting full circle there. But to me, the thing that was really smart was throughout the movie, they insert clips of he and his girlfriend, Beth, Odette Annabelle, a month prior going to Coney Island. And they're interspliced throughout the film. We see them on the Ferris wheel of Coney Island, and you see they have this shot of the ocean. And they pull back and, hey, what'd you think? And she goes, I think it was a great day. That's the last thing we see. However, if you watch closely from like this part of the screen down, you see this satellite or monster, or I know it's been debated over the years. I always thought it was a satellite, but what do I know? You see this thing come down from the screen. And that got the internet buzzing, and the forums and the message boards. What was that thing that fell out of the sky? And that's all of these people came up with these really fun like ARGs and conspiracy theories as to what that was. And all of these things, with old school J.J. Abrams, whether it be Slusho, Tagerato, all of these crazy kind of conspiracy theories that came along with Cloverfield. And that's the thing that I think Cloverfield does right. It used its era to its advantage. Is there a man in a rubber suit in this movie? No. Are there going to be people upset with that? Sure, there will be. And I'm old school like that. I'd rather it be a man in a rubber suit. However, when it comes to usage of CGI, this movie used CGI so well and quick and sparingly, and to the point where you get quick glimpses of things, but it's never dwelled upon for too long to the point where I go, oh, well, I clearly see that's fake. I clearly see that's a computer-generated image. No. If I can look at it and it's quick and it's effective, you're doing your job right. And it's CGI used at its peak. And considering this was not, a great time for CGI, but they used it to its peak advantage here. There are also these little spider creatures that spawn off. They're CGI. For the most part, they hold up. They look pretty good. Even on this 4K where you can see them slightly better, the lighting is a little bit more. The HDR really, brightens this thing up. I don't know. I really like the original Cloverfield. I think this is a fantastic monster movie. I think this is everything you'd be looking for. It also has some fun Easter eggs throughout it. If you're a fan of a movie like The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms or Them, you could watch. If you slow it down, hit the pause button for occasions, you'll see monsters from all these old school movies. You could see Kong, you could see the giant ant from Them. You see some of these things that inspired a movie like Cloverfield, and I really appreciate that personally. I like that J.J. Abrams paid tribute to the past while still being his own original idea and movie for the future. That's why I love Cloverfield. I think this movie is just a really good example of what new school horror movies should be. We don't have to say that, we don't embrace the past or we're not going to acknowledge the past. No, acknowledge the past, but still be your own thing. Still be your own movie on your own two legs. And I think Cloverfield does that to an ultimate T. Cloverfield, the original, I would give this like a 9 out of 10. I really enjoy this movie. I believe it's on HBO Max. So if you haven't seen this one, if you want to kill 73 minutes, highly recommend Cloverfield. I think this is an awesome flick. Also, this 4K goes for dirt cheap, like $7. If you have speakers or a subwoofer like I do, this is a fun damn movie to watch. I really enjoy the original Cloverfield. So everybody check this out if you have not already. Highly recommend. So I guess I'm going to shoot all of these in one video because I still have like a good half hour to record on this. So I guess I'll just do the entire trilogy in one thing. I was thinking initially maybe I'll split them up or whatever, but we'll just do one shot and we'll upload this. This will be like, you know, the answer to the lost episode of Grande's Graveyard that was the stream from last night. So that is what it is. And again, thank you for bearing with me. But after this thing came out, there was a lot of speculation in the community, and people wanted a Cloverfield 2 ASAP. They wanted a sequel. And Matt Reeves was asked about it. Goddard was asked about it. J.J. Abrams was asked about it. And Matt Reeves came up with the cool idea of, what if we did a sequel where it's the perspective of somebody else who was maybe filming that night? And that was talked about, batted around. I'm sure, I don't know if this is a fact, but I'm sure there were drafts and scripts that were produced. I don't know if anything came to be, or any of those drafts of scripts are still around, but part of me likes to think that that definitely was the case. Somebody must have written a draft for a true Cloverfield sequel. We never got that, though, and people were pissed at the time. And to this day, people are pissed that we never got the true Cloverfield 2 monster movie in the city thing. You know, that is what it is. Instead, 8 years down the road, out of the blue, we get this little movie from director Dan Trachtenberg. This is 10 Cloverfield Lane. Yes, 10 Cloverfield Lane. In my humble opinion, this is a wonderful film, too. And this is probably my favorite of the trilogy. Now, I remember seeing the trailer for this, and it was a brief, like a 30-second TV spot trailer. It wasn't like your classic 2.5-minute trailer where they give away the whole fucking film. We were talking last night how I hate that. But I saw the TV spot, and I was like, like, how is that going to connect to the first Cloverfield? That's pretty interesting. And I remember walking into the theater that night, very on the fence, like, what is this? You know, it's not shot in, you know, the first person shot on video perspective. It doesn't look from the trailer that there's a monster in this, or the monster that we saw in the original film. I see John Goodman. I see Mary Elizabeth Winstead, horror royalty, whether it be the Black Christmas remake, whether it be Final Destination 3, Death Proof, The Thing remake, whether it be, you know, movies like Sky High. I love Mary Elizabeth Winstead. I think she's a wonderful actress. But I didn't know what to think going in. And I pretty much left being very pleasantly surprised with this thing. This thing basically tells the story of Mary Elizabeth Winstead's character, and the movie opens where her boyfriend breaks up with her and she's driving away from him. He calls on the phone, and it's actually, funny enough, it's Bradley Cooper who's the voice on the phone. Not a lot of people know that, but that's Bradley Cooper in a weird, random voice cameo. He's one of like 6 or 7 actors in this entire movie. But I thought that was pretty interesting when I found that out. Mary Elizabeth Winstead, she's driving along. All of a sudden, she gets driven off the road. She wakes up, and she's in this, like, underground bunker. And who else but Mr. fucking Dan O'Connor himself, yes, Mr. John Goodman, Walter Sobchak, he is holding her captive and claims that the air outside is unbreathable for all humans alike, and he's going to take care of her, nurse her back to health, and hopefully when this whole thing blows over, she can go. But she thinks he's completely crazy. And this entire movie is a wonderful, you know, underground thriller. And I think that's why I really enjoy this film, because it completely shifts gears from what this movie is. This is a monster movie shot on video in New York City, embracing the era, embracing CGI, embracing the old school mentality of what it was to be a monster movie. And then this thing comes out, and this is like an underground thriller, similar vein to something like Day of the Dead. If Day of the Dead met Misery or something like that, it's definitely along those lines. And the great psychology of John Goodman's character is the whole idea of, do we believe this guy? Do we not believe this guy? Is he lying, or is he telling the truth? And that's, I think, the brilliant, the old Gene Wilder trope with Willy Wonka. Of course, if you remember in Willy Wonka, Gene Wilder, when he first comes out, he's limping, and he has this cane. He's limping along the red carpet. And as soon as he gets to the edge, he puts his stick in the ground. He kind of does a somersault, and he's, ta-da, like, I don't really have a limp. That was Gene Wilder's psychology of, for the rest of this movie, people will not be able to tell the difference, whether I'm lying or whether I'm telling the truth. And John Goodman executes that psychology of character so well here. I love John Goodman in this film. He is absolutely the best thing in it, and he steals the whole goddamn thing. He's wonderful. You also have John Gallagher Jr. in this film as like sort of the relief character, the third wheel, if you will, between Mary Elizabeth Winstead and John Goodman. And I think he's a really good actor. He's also in a movie called Short Term 12, which I remember watching back in Scale Media class. And that's a really good movie as well with he and Brie Larson. They're running like this, I think like Home for Troubled Kids. It's a really good movie, Short Term 12. I haven't seen it in a while. You're talking, that might have been like 7-8 years ago or something like that. Like that's a long time since I've seen that movie, but I really remember liking him in it, especially. He was like the head counselor. But he's really good here too as the Emmett character. Again, a lot of this movie is really John Goodman versus Mary Elizabeth Winstead, and he kind of plays, the middle ground. He's at points when she doubts John Goodman, he's like, wait a minute, I don't know if you should doubt everything he's saying, and vice versa. He's a very cool character in this. I really like the character development of all three of them. Of course, Emmett's character, he, insinuates that he would have been this big track star, and he had this, bus ticket to go to an Ivy League school. He got accepted. He was super excited. And he confesses to Mary Elizabeth Winstead, he's like, listen, like the day came, and the day before I was so nervous and scared of my future that I got shit-faced, and I missed the bus, and I missed the next bus and the bus after that. And he was really afraid to grow up and become an adult and move on, into the future of his life. And, I really like that they give him that kind of character, like I really like his whole backstory. It makes you sort of sympathize a little bit for him because he was just afraid of growing up. And then on the other hand, Mary Elizabeth Winstead's character, she, her entire life felt like she was abused, whether it be her father, her boyfriend. She says there's this point where she was in a store and she saw this kid pretty much being abused by her father, dragging her arm hard and stuff. And Mary Elizabeth Winstead wanted to say something, but she couldn't bring herself to do it. She's always sort of running away from her problems. And towards the end of this, it comes full circle. But I liked that sort of character study there. And then, of course, John Goodman's character, which is probably the most interesting of the bunch. Like I was saying the whole time, we don't know if he's lying or telling the truth. We know he's this conspiracy theory guy. We know he's dealt with satellites, which might be a nod to the end of this film when you see the satellite come out of the sky. Did John Goodman have something to do with that? We may never know. It's never concretely said. But I like how if you listen closely to some of the dialogue in these movies, you see where they're Easter eggs and they connect, which I think is pretty interesting. But John Goodman tells this whole tale of how his daughter, left him. The wife turned the daughter against him, and he was heartbroken about it. And we don't know whether to believe him or not. That's the whole thing. But he really cannot see a woman as anything other than a little girl. And that's the thing. He starts to think Mary Elizabeth Winstead is maybe his daughter. He's pretending that she's his daughter that abandoned him. And it's really creepy. John Goodman is creepy in this. And this thing is tension-filled to the brim. That dinner scene towards the beginning of the film where they're all sitting and John Goodman just is a short fuse. That shit is excellent. It is really tension filled. You're like, what the fuck? Like I don't know. You're on the edge of your seat. It almost reminds me of the scene from Hush Hush Sweet Charlotte, with Bette Davis, Olivia de Havilland, where you're just like, you're just waiting for something horrible to happen. It's almost like a bomb is about to go off, even though, the bomb is maybe named John Goodman. And it's funny. People complain about this thing for years and years and years. And people say, oh, well, I don't like 10 Cloverfield Lane because there's not a monster in it. The monster is not in this movie. The monster in this movie is John Goodman. And that's the tagline right here. Monsters come in many forms. I think that was the genius thing. The really true monster of this thing is John Goodman. And I think he does a great job in the role. I do think this thing has a great pace to it. It's an underground thriller, about an hour and 40 minutes. I like that there are points where they sort of kick back, relax, and enjoy themselves. They're playing board games and puzzles and playing all this music. I think we're alone now. There doesn't seem to be anyone around. Great stuff. Similar vein to Dawn of the Dead when they just start to enjoy themselves in the mall. I like that part. And I think this thing really wraps up pretty interesting. Spoilers here. John Goodman ends up killing Emmett's character. He shoots him point blank in the head. Really intense scene. And Mary Elizabeth Winstead decides she has to escape. So she makes this whole suit so she can go outside in the air. She turns on John Goodman. She gets outside and she takes a look up and she's like, wait a minute, like, is this air breathable? Because she sees a flock of birds. And she's like, oh my God, was John Goodman full of shit and wrong the whole time? She takes the suit off and she can breathe fine. She's like, oh my God, was all of this for naught? All of a sudden, we see this alien mothership coming right towards Mary Elizabeth Winstead. And all hell breaks loose. This is an alien invasion, and they spray these chemicals that if you breathe them in, the air will affect and kill you. So John Goodman, again, he was partially right, but partially also wrong. He does mention, he goes, maybe extraterrestrial. He was right about that. It's funny. It's John Goodman's character. It's a gray area character. There are points where you're like, okay, he's as black as they come. Or there are points where, oh, he's a good guy. He's as white as they come. No, this is a gray area villain. And it's very well acted by John Goodman. I really appreciate this performance. I really like the movie. I know a lot of people, they complain about the ending. They go, oh man, I can't stand that ending. It's an underground thriller for about 90 minutes. And then the last 10 minutes, what the hell? It's an alien invasion film. People just automatically check out. And I understand that. That's a big gear shift between films. However, when you watch this movie, part of me expected to see some kind of monster, that was not John Goodman or alien or something to show up in this movie. And that happens here. So I didn't really necessarily cry wolf or foul like a lot of people did. I think this was a really cool movie on its own two legs because it's an entertaining, enjoyable thriller for the first 90 minutes. And it's a good enough movie as a whole, even before they connect it to the original Cloverfield. I think that's my opinion. And the whole thing and the whole arc for Mary Elizabeth Winstead's character really worked for me too. She's driving away from the mothership that she just destroyed. And she hears on the radio, if you have any experience in combat, blah, blah, blah. We have survivors in Houston. We need your help. And she sees a sign that says Baton Rouge straight ahead, Houston to the left. And she decides, all right, I'm done running, and that's her whole character's arc. She turns left to Houston. We see an alien mothership in the distance, but we realize that she's done running away from her problems. If she dies, she dies, but she's going to fight back. And I really liked her whole character's arc. I think this is an excellent underground thriller horror movie. I think it's John Goodman's finest performance, dare I say, because it's funny. We were talking about in the stream last night. The guy is always remembered for playing like lovable characters, whether it be Sully in Monsters Inc., Dan O'Connor, of course, on Roseanne. We were talking about the Flintstones. He was Fred Flintstone, of course, The Borrowers. A lot of movies where, John Goodman's very likable. Granted, not in The Borrowers, but a lot of movies where he's likable or television shows where he's likable. To make him sort of shift gears and show that evil side, that dark side, but then again, at points, he puts that John Goodman charm on you. It's a really excellent performance, excellent movie. I would give this a little bit even better of a score. I'm going to go 9.5 out of 10 for 10 Cloverfield Lane. I really enjoy this movie. My favorite of the bunch, bar none. So when that movie came out, though, it got a lot of mixed reviews. Critics alike loved it. There were a lot of people like me that enjoyed the film. However, I think, it rubbed people the wrong way that this was not a straight up Cloverfield 2. In a lot of ways, it's funny because people complain that it wasn't doing the same thing over, and you think about sequels over time. Friday the 13th Part 2, the body count literally continues, right? Like there are so many sequels that are very similar to the original. They don't change a lot of things. If you watch, certain movies like that, like Friday the 13th Part 2, you watch that and you're like, okay, what is really different here? Not that much. Sometimes there'll be filmmakers that are more daring, like Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 is a completely different animal from the original film. Nightmare on Elm Street 2 is a completely different animal from the original film. But, films like Final Destination 2, 3, so on and so forth, those movies are exactly the same thing pretty much. So, it's funny, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. If you make a carbon copy sequel, how dare they make a carbon copy sequel? If you do something like 10 Cloverfield Lane, which is a completely different type of movie, they made a completely different type of movie. I'm outraged. It's sometimes you can't win with people, but I don't know. In my opinion, this is a damn good movie, Cloverfield or not. That's just my humble opinion. But with that, I think not outrage from everybody, but with those complaints from the general public, I think J.J. Abrams was like, all right, listen, we got to somehow tie these things together. And he went to Paramount and said, okay, we're going to do a part 3. And this part 3 was another one that kind of came out of thin air. And I remember watching the Super Bowl that year and seeing the very first ad teaser for this and being shocked that it was going to be available to watch right after the bowl. And it is another than from 2018 to date, the final Cloverfield film, although I do think there will be more. This is the Cloverfield Paradox. Yes, the Cloverfield Paradox. I remember, like I was saying, we were watching the Super Bowl and we were all sitting there and eating food and, having a grand old time. I believe it was Eagles Patriots. Fun Super Bowl, really good Super Bowl. And this little teaser came on and it was clips from the first Cloverfield. 10 years ago, something attacked us. Now find out why. And it was the Cloverfield Paradox. And what blew my mind was, instead of at the end where the original Cloverfield 1/1808 gave me a date to look forward to, this thing said live after the Super Bowl ends. They dropped this on Netflix streaming right after the Super Bowl ended. And I remember people on Twitter, this is back when I actually had Twitter, before I deleted that toxic shit. People were going bonkers about it. Holy shit, they're doing a Cloverfield 3. Oh my God. Who cares about this game anymore? We wanted to see it end, so we want to watch the third Cloverfield movie. And this was really the first big main budget mainstream movie to sort of get released direct to a streaming service. And I don't know if a lot of people realize that this was a sort of pioneer in its own right to do that. Because now we have all these movies because of the pandemic. Oh, it'll be in theaters, but it'll also be in HBO Max. Oh, it'll be in theaters, but it'll also be on Peacock. Oh, it'll be in theaters, but it'll also be on Paramount Plus, Netflix, etc. This was the first movie to really do that. And this was before the pandemic days. So this was really an interesting movie, even before I saw it, because I was like, wow, why would Paramount not give this a theatrical run after the financial and critical success of the 10 Cloverfield Lane? The answer is, I think, and this is just my theory, I don't know if this is a fact or not, but I'm like 90% sure this is what happened. Paramount in the year 2017 had a atrocious year at the box office. Flop after flop after flop. The big flop I remember was the Baywatch movie with The Rock and Zac Efron. That fucking thing flopped, and they thought it was going to be a big hit. They thought The Rock, Zac Efron, throw a couple yits in there, we're going to make a lot of money. It didn't happen that way. And I think Paramount got cold feet because I think they saw this and they were like, this isn't the first film. Hell, this isn't 10 Cloverfield Lane. We're getting cold feet. We're scared we're not going to turn a profit. This was made for about 45 million estimated. Netflix comes along and says, we'll buy the thing off of you and we'll make sure you have an instant profit. So instant profit is usually your money times 2, right? So around, I'm guessing in the ballpark of $80 to $90 million Netflix paid to put this thing in their library. Absolutely mind-blowing when you think about it. Because I know everybody and their mother pretty much hates this thing. I'm not in that field. I like this. I'm in the small minority of people that actually enjoy this film. But when you think about 90 million maximum they may have paid for this, wow. That's wow. I mean, pretty shocking stuff. I think they really should have Paramount should have just kept it and released it in the theaters. It still may have gotten shit on by critics, because it is generally shit on by critics and fans alike, but I think they would have turned a profit. At least I think so. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. But just the name alone, I think, would have sold this. But that's just my theory. I don't know. I wasn't there. But that's a lot of that speculation. But, I did my research. And from what I can understand and what I think Paramount at the time showed a bit of weakness selling this to Netflix. But they said, hey, we get the profit, our money times 2. Go run with this thing. And Netflix did their job, because I went home and immediately subscribed back to Netflix. I wasn't subscribed to them at the time. Immediately subscribed back just to watch this thing. This thing, though, as a film as a whole, it is the weakest of the 3, but I don't necessarily think it's the piece of shit people make it out to be. This one tells the story of this space crew on their Earth. Their energy is running out slowly but surely. Our lead character is played by Gugu Mbatha-Raw. I think she does a wonderful job in this. Possibly the best performance of the series, and that's saying something considering John Goodman's performance in the previous film. I love her in this. She does not get enough love, in my humble opinion. A lot of people just dismiss this movie. watch it for her performance, if for nothing else, and come back and tell me you got nothing out of it. If that's the case, that's the case. But I think she's wonderful in this. I really like the entire cast. Of course, you have Chris O'Dowd, who I think is fairly funny in the film. You have Z Zhang, who I always remember from Rush Hour 2. She's the one that Chris Tucker keeps hitting on. You know, we could have something special, but you one crazy ass bitch. I mean, I love Z Zhang in that movie. I think it's just absolutely, she's great. And she didn't age a day. You know, watching this thing, you're like, holy shit, that's the girl from Rush Hour 2. You're like, 20 years have passed and she still looks fantastic. I mean, it's absolutely a true testament to how fucking good looking, beautiful, and how the age stick just did not hit her at all. I like the entire cast of this thing. I really do. This is basically plays out more like a space thriller or space horror film in the similar vein of Event Horizon. This is not as good as Event Horizon, if I get my words straight here. It's not as good as that, but I do think it's serviceable on its own 2 feet. This thing, these crew, they fire up this God particle in attempt to restore energy to the planet Earth, and end up shooting themselves into an alternate dimension, totally Twilight Zone style. And this whole rest of this thing plays out as kind of this space horror thriller. Weird things start happening. They find this woman in the walls who claims from another dimension she was a part of this crew. And our lead character of Hamilton, of course, played by Gugu Mbatha-Raw, she didn't go with them because on this Earth, her children are still alive. Of course, we have this whole backstory where Hamilton, she accidentally killed her kids because she had this power cell in the house that unfortunately caught fire and the kids didn't make it out alive. So you really have a heartbreaking story for our lead character and kind of arc for her, right? Because she really, on this dimension, her kids are alive. So part of her wants to stay and go back home, take an escape pod to go see her children that she so much misses. But as this thing plays out, we flip back and forth between the space horror crew and Hamilton's husband on Earth. And he finds this little girl. He rescues her and shit. He's taking care of her. And, we're going back and forth between the two of them. Not quite sure what's going on. Now, this was advertised as, we're going to connect them all. Don't worry about it. We're going to connect them all. I think that's where this loses people, because it is very complex and it is very contrived at times. And if you're not interested in the whole multiverse and, all those things, you're not going to like this movie. I guarantee you're going to hate this, because it goes really far into this stuff way before Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, or this whole, Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, all this shit. This is really, trying to do this for a horror film. And I respect the attempt. I respect that this is not a simple film. This is a very complex film. But I can understand why that rubs people the wrong way and why people do not like this thing as a whole. I do. I think it has good performances. I think some of the sequences of horror are well done. Chris O'Dowd gets his arm taken off and they're looking around. They finally find his arm and he has the great line, "That's my fucking arm." Fucking hilarious. And they're trying to reattach his arm. Some funny stuff in this. You have the one guy, he throws up space worms, and a lot of people hate that. I don't know. I didn't mind it. For a space horror film, I didn't think it was too out of the ordinary to see. But where I think this really shines is the third act. Hamilton, and again, spoilers, Hamilton is convinced she's going to stay in this universe. And the woman they find in the walls tells her, hey, you should, me and you should take an escape pod down and we should go back. You should visit your kids and live happily ever after. She's going to do that, but she realizes that it's not her Earth. It's not really her kids. It is in another dimension, but she has to go back home to, her husband. She realizes that it's just a dream. It's just a fantasy. She'd love for it to happen. But at the end of the day, I think in the back of her mind, she knows it's the wrong thing to do. And she has to let go. And she has this whole fight with this woman about it, and they fucking fight to the death. And I thought the whole brilliance was, you see her kids in this other dimension, older now, on the screen, and it's a video playing out, and she shoots the screen. And she almost has to do it just to let go of it. She shoots the screen, gravity sucks this villainous woman in through it and back out into outer space. Really, really cool finale. I like that stuff. I think it's well done here. Of course, our remaining characters fire up the particle to get back to planet Earth. They do. They take the escape pod, and we get the most controversial ending of the three. Our main characters go down to Earth. The lead husband, he's pissed about this. Tell them not to come back. Tell them not to come back. They take an escape pod. All of a sudden, the Cloverfield monster from the original film pops up. Sorry, with the laundry going. Pops up a lot better than last night's stream. The Cloverfield monster pops up, and it's taller than the clouds, roars, and this thing comes to an end. And I remember people bashing the fuck out of this when I got to school the next day. And this was college years. Everybody and their mother, that is the stupidest fucking ending I've ever seen. Fuck this thing. How do you call that connecting this? I think my whole theory, and I'll keep it brief because there are, analysts videos and analysis videos and everything you need to know about the Cloverfield. Shut the fuck up. Fuck you. What I think is once they fired up this Paradox, I think the whole idea is all three of these movies are Cloverfield movies, but I think they're three different Earths at three different times. The original film, this is Earth 2008, monster movie. The monster is much smaller. Of course, 10 Cloverfield Lane. I think this is like another Earth where it's instead of a monster movie at the end, it's alien invasion. And then this one, it's another monster, but I think it's plural. So there's going to be multiple monsters. And the monster is literally taller than the sky, the clouds, if you will. So it's three different universes, three different timelines. I think people just wanted it to be wrapped up in a nice little bow. Like all three movies are the same universe and the same wavelength, same time. And that would have been fine. I think that probably would have been better to at least, I know it's a complex film, but at least make that part of it simple. But I mean, it is what it is. You can't undo it. It is what it is now. Again, I think this is a passable space thriller. That's my big argument. The people that like this movie go, oh, I really like this movie. I know it gets a little batshit at the end and you could take or leave the ending, but for an enjoyable 90 minutes underground thriller, I like the movie. A lot of people watch this and just talk about how it tried to connect. It doesn't connect, blah, blah, blah. They very rarely discuss the film itself, the space horror thriller that it is. And I think as a whole, that part of the movie is very passable. The rest of it, I can hear you thinking it's a bunch of bullshit. I really can. So, I mean, it is what it is. You could take this movie or leave it. A lot of people are going to leave it. I give it the lukewarm recommendation. I say watch it for Gugu Mbatha-Raw's performance. Just alone on that, it's fantastic. I really like her performance. I kind of like the film. I can't lie. I can watch this over and over. I don't really mind this one at all. Weakest of the three, but definitely one that it does not deserve the shit it gets. It's a lot better than some of these other fucking sequels that come out nowadays. That's just my humble opinion. If I had to rate this one, I'm going to go like a 6.5 out of 10. It's just above average, pretty good movie, decent enough watch. If you have Netflix, I believe Netflix owns this thing forever. They paid $90 million or so. So I would think they would still have that in the library for a long time to come. But that has been the Cloverfield Trilogy review. I hope you all enjoyed. I really enjoy all of these movies. This was a fun episode to discuss, even if I had to record it twice. And I won't lie, I did miss you guys commenting on the bottom and stuff like that. I like working and feeding off with you guys. But I figured I owed this to everybody because I am deeply sorry that last night's stream didn't go as I planned. And we had the technical difficulties that we did. But I hope this makes up for it. I really do. And if not, I promise I'll try to just keep doing better. That's my motto. Trying to do better, man. Just trying to do better. So everybody, thank you so much for watching. Again, if you're a fan of the Cloverfield films, comment down below. Let me know maybe what your favorite of the three is. Like I said, I'm sticking with part 2, 10 Cloverfield Lane. But I like all these movies as a whole. I think it's a pretty damn good trilogy. And I'm interested to see where Cloverfield goes next. I don't know. It's been in talks and development for about a year now, but nothing has come of it. So I don't know. We will cross that bridge when we get to it, I guess. But everybody have a wonderful, safe, happy, healthy weekend. And once again, thank you for all your support and patience and time. It really does mean the world to me. So thank you so much. We will be back next week on The Graveyard with a horror roundtable. I'm super excited about that. Also, my Severin shit is on its way. So whenever that comes, unboxing video for Severin. I promise we're going to have a grand old time. Everybody, we will catch you next time only on The Graveyard. Too sweet. Peace. We'll catch you next time.